Thank you very much for joining us on Innovative Pioneers, where we showcase innovative thinkers and leaders across the globe from a variety of professions. I am Dominique Wilson, your host. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing you all to Katya Hatel. She is the Senior Director of Sustainability at Conagra Brands, and she's currently helping support the R&D organization, working with colleagues across operations, procurement, brand, investor relations to drive business value through more environmental responsibility practices. She joined Conagra in 2017. Prior to Conagra Brands, Katya spent nearly a decade in corporate sustainability communications, advising Fortune 500 companies on sustainability strategy and communications to consumers, stakeholders, and not-for-profit audiences. Her background in education, she received her master's degree in environmental management from Duke University and a bachelor's degree in environmental studies with policy focus from Washington University in St. Louis. Currently, she serves on the External Advisory Council for Duke University's Nicholas School of Environmental and is on the CSR board as well. She currently resides in Chicago area and her husband, Nick, and her 4 children. I am so excited to welcome you here, Katya, and thank you so much for joining us on Innovative Pioneers.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm curious, like we all are curious, why a career in corporate sustainability? Tell us, what drove you towards this passion?
I originally came out of the nonprofit community, but I found it so rewarding to shift to corporate sustainability and try to create change from the inside. Because when you think about a large company like Conagra Brands, which is a Fortune 500 company, we make one decision and it reverberates in the marketplace and can have a huge positive impact. So I'll give you an example of this. Back in 2014, Conagra Brands made a set of goals to source 100% of the palm oil that's used in our products,
Yes.
100% certified sustainable, so that there were no negative impacts to orangutan habitat, no deforestation, good labor practices coming out of that, associated with that ingredient. And that one choice, by the way, we met that goal in 2020.
That's awesome.
That one choice means that 75,000 tons worth of palm oil that we source every year is better for the environment than it otherwise could be. And all the millions of baked goods that goes into are positively impacted.
I love that, and the fact that you all instill that within you all's policies and operations, and finding ways to do that efficiently and ensuring that improves the environment that we're living in. And that's important for a company of you all size, and I think for any company, for them to think about their intentionality behind that. I'm curious, like you kind of allude to it a little bit, but why do you think it is important for companies to think about their impact on the environment?
A company has a humongous environmental footprint. So just picture a trip to the grocery store and all the products you see around yourself. There's packaging, that millions and billions of pieces of packaging associated with the grocery industry. All the farmers that are impacting the environment when they grow their crops. All the way down to the impacts to the environment we have at home when we use products and when we have to dispose of the packaging. So companies really make a big difference on the earth. And that's why it's so exciting to work in this field.
It speaks volumes on that. I'm curious, can you speak to some strategies that you think is important and or something that you all have done to help implement and improve your own carbon footprint and how other companies can do that as well?
You're bringing up a really hot topic, carbon footprint, right? Climate change is so top of mind to consumers and people today. And first, let me take a minute to outline what is the carbon footprint and where does it come from for a food company, right? So carbon emissions and carbon footprint come from energy use. So think about when coal is burned to create electricity in the electric grid to power manufacturing plants for food. Think of all the gasoline that's burned, right, in the trucks to drive our food from factory to retailer. But the real biggest source of energy use for a food company, the biggest source of carbon footprint is embedded in the ingredients and the packaging materials. Because if you think about the energy that goes into making a product, you got to go all the way back to, for a plastic package, think about the energy it takes to pull the oil out of the ground to make the materials that turn into plastic. Think about all the energy that goes into growing the feed for the animals to eat that then becomes a hot dog, right? A beef hot dog. So the biggest areas on carbon footprint that we have to impact are the carbon footprint associated with our products and sourcing ingredients and packaging materials. And that's why we have set a target that by 2030, we want to reduce the carbon footprint of our manufacturing operations by 25%. And on top of that, reduce the carbon footprint of our product portfolio, so all those ingredients, all that packaging, by 20% by 2030. And how do we do something like that? Well, on the manufacturing side, we recently put online 6,000 solar panels at our St. Elmo, Illinois facility that manufactures syrups, Mrs. Butterworth's log cabin, and wishbone salad dressing, so that plant is contributing to a cleaner energy grid in Illinois. And on the product side, we have brands like Gardein, which is a plant-based meat alternative. So if you think about all the energy that it takes to feed cattle to turn into hot dogs, well, if we can give consumers a choice that you can choose a meat-free version of a burger that is made from pea or soy, that has a smaller carbon footprint to produce, putting that in the market is a way to lower the overall carbon footprint of our product offering.
Appreciate you alluding to that and explaining more deeply on carbon footprint. I actually have a clarifying question on something you mentioned on the production and maybe you can quantify it for me on, let's say that plastic material, how much energy would you think it equates to, like in terms of light bulbs or in terms of wattage or even in test of time?
Might have to get back to you on a really good example, but I'll leave you with this. If you were to hold up a product that you buy in the grocery store and you were going to think about where does most of the carbon footprint come from, it is likely 60 to 80% from the ingredients list and the packaging material that it's made out of. Nothing else. It's just the choices that the food company made when they were dreaming up the product.
I try my best to always look at the labels, and even my lady encouraged me to do that even more, just to look at the sodium that's in the content, just being more conscientious of what we take into our bodies, but also where it's coming from. So thank you for that. And I'm curious, how do you and your team partner with other organizations towards your sustainability efforts?
One of the most innovative partnerships we have on the supply side is with a company called Footprint. They are our supplier for plant-based fiber serving bowls for microwave frozen meals.
That's awesome.
They are so they are a more sustainable alternative to a stereotypical black plastic frozen meal tray that requires a lot of energy to produce. And Footprint, you might know them because they are the same company with the naming rights currently to the Phoenix Suns Arena.
That's awesome.
So they are really an exciting partner for us that helps us make a difference with plant-based packaging for our frozen meals.
No, I think that's very innovative and very thoughtful as a company. And I challenge other companies to think about how can, when they produce a product or service, how can they be more intentional on how they deliver it and where it's sourced from and how it's created. And then also how does that impact the consumers and our livelihood thereafter. because ultimately, if our consumers are not around, we're not able to have a sustainable business. Um, so that's very well received. So thank you for that. And I know we're talking about a very, a topic that oftentimes, companies dread to talk about. It can be tough. Um, what are some ways you think that leaders in companies to speak up to address um, ways to better impact the environment, or to be more intentional on these topics of sustainability? How do you think they can improve on that and bring the topic up?
The first thing that leaders need to recognize, and I think many of them already do, is that most of your workforce wants the company they work for to be more sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
So I was reading a piece with some data from Inc. and Cone that noted that by 2025, millennials will be 75% of the workforce. And millennials, more than 80% of the millennials surveyed prefer to work for companies that are socially and environmentally responsible. So most of the workforce really cares about this. What I would say to leaders is, first of all, leaders need to say, I hear you, to their workforce, to their customers, to their consumers. I hear you that this is important. Mm-hmm. And secondly, I am committed to progress, not perfection. We know that perfection is going to be a long journey, but at least committing to progress can go a long way, even if it looks daunting.
I agree with you. Is to first acknowledge it, and then ultimately do something about it, and put in some practices that can help improve it. But acknowledging it and then bringing it to the forefront so that we ourselves can better resolve those challenges in front of us. So I appreciate you speaking to that. Now, I saw that you recently joined the U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action. First and foremost, congratulations. That's awesome. I'm intrigued. Can you tell us more about your role there and why you think it's important for corporate executives to be advocates and some of the initiatives you all are focusing on?
So about a year ago, Conagra, and I was so pleased to join more than 30 organizations across the food value chain to develop a 2030 vision for sustainable agriculture in the U.S. So Conagra, in partnership with Danone, Nestle, McDonald's, as well as our farmers, soy farmers, dairy farmers, sugar farmers, all sorts of ingredients that are grown in the U.S., put together a vision that by 2030, we want agriculture in the U.S. to be climate smart, to be economically viable for farmers to grow using more sustainable practices. And we envision an America where everyday consumers appreciate what farmers do to be more eco-friendly and are aware of their efforts. Last year, the U.S. FRA, U.S. Farmers and Ranchers in Action, so our umbrella group that we all joined, took this vision to the UN at COP26 in Glasgow. So we now have a global audience for this U.S.-based vision, and are very excited about that. Yeah, and so now comes the how, right? Mm-hmm. We set the vision. And now it's, how are you going to progress on this? What does this mean for each company, for each organization? So I would say stay tuned to Conagra's next citizenship report coming out this spring, where we'll outline a little bit more about how we're progressing on sustainable agriculture.
I cannot wait to check that out and share with other people that's in my community, and because I find that it's important for us to be intentional about our earth, and I think that some people, they just come into the world, but they never really think about how they step into it and their reaction, but also the end results of their actions as well. So that's very powerful. And I'm curious, and as we're coming to the close of our conversation, and I'm curious, as a professional and someone that has had some myriad experiences, like, what are some key lessons you would tell someone that's pursuing a goal? And what are some steps you think that they can take to help achieve it successfully?
I boil this down to one phrase that I really tell young people just starting out, or people who are working in corporate sustainability, or even social or environmental responsibility on the nonprofit front too. Don't focus on trying to make a big impact. That's overwhelming. Instead, focus on trying to make lots of small impacts.
Mm-hmm.
And before you know it, all of those small impacts will have rolled up into something really significant.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on Innovative Pioneers and sharing your story. And I'm sure our listeners and those that are watching this gained a lot. And thank you again, Katya. And um, I am your host, Dominique Wilson. And remember, never stop pursuing your dreams. And action gets you closer than you were yesterday. Until next time, take care.